Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Couch. This podcast is about branding, building, and business. It also highlights the grit that it takes to be successful in business and in life. Let's get started. Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast with Stephanie Couch. I am excited to have my guest here today, one of my dearest friends. Her name is Keeley, and we actually met when we were living in Orlando last year. Welcome to the show, Keeley. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having me. I'm so excited and elated to be a part of this.
Well, we didn't realize when we first met, but we were actually neighbors in Orlando, lived in the same subdivision. Kind of crazy how the universe works. And we also both have an affection for pearls, which we're both repping today. And things in common, a love of dogs and brunch and all these other things. So we hit it off very quickly, and you came to one of our Build Women events, and I found out that you actually are in the construction industry. So I want to hear and let our audience hear all about you. Tell me about you and your background and what you're doing today and how you got there.
So a little bit about me. My background is my undergrad is health service administration, and I got my master's degree in business administration. So when I was in the healthcare background, I did a lot of healthcare, and I realized that I needed something to do while I was in nursing school. And so I started working for a roofing company, not knowing anything about it, nothing. This is over 12 years ago in South Florida, where I'm originally from. And so I learned the basics. I learned permitting. I got to go up on roofs to learn it from a very visual learner. So I got to go up on roofs. I ended up estimating for that company. And so my roof knowledge just took off from there to then realizing I had a real love and passion for the construction world. So I completely bridged over and left the healthcare side completely. And I've been into construction for 12 years now. And so throughout the years, I've worked on both the residential and commercial side of roofing. For about 3 years, I worked in windows and doors. And then realized that my true passion was roofing. And so I've been back in the roofing industry for a little under a year at this point. I currently work for a really large company in Central Florida called 3MG Roofing. We're the premier roofer for UCF. And we do a lot of residential and commercial. And I am our assistant operations manager. And we have a team of about 300. So it's pretty big.
Wow. That's a big company, especially with, something like roofing, to have that many employees, a lot of crews, and a lot of moving parts to keep up with. I love that we both have a window and door background because, as I'm a door nerd. So we bonded over that pretty quickly too. Had some, you worked for a place I used to sell doors to. So it was really cool to talk through that. And just, I think life's funny how you find connections with people that it's not always in construction, but there's so many people that you meet that have some kind of tie to the construction industry. Either someone in their family does it, or they did it, or they still do. And I love that about the fact that you can connect to people. And obviously you're a woman in a very male-dominated space in the roofing industry. I don't know if I've ever seen a female roofer in my personal life. It's always been men. What kind of challenges and also opportunities have you seen being a woman in such a male-dominated space, and how have you overcome and really capitalized on those things?
So it's not an easy task to be a woman in this industry. As you said, it's very male-dominated. And so finding your niche within that to kind of be a problem solver and show why those problems work and how you can fix them was my biggest strength. And it's part of why I went back to school to get my master's degree. So I not only had the knowledge of it, but I had a degree to back it up, because I felt that with those two things, I could be a powerhouse and really prove what I can do. Over the years, I found many times where I've had to prove something and say, hey, this is my idea as to why this would or would not work, and here's why. And then for, a male to say, oh, that's not true, you don't know, to then at another point in time, oh, wait, you were actually right. And it's like, well, this is why, this is how I got my information, because it may have happened to me in the past. And so, those hurdles come, and I look at them as challenges, and I look at them as a way to continue to make waves in the industry. And I never look at something as a negative. I look at, hey, I learned something, and this is how I'm going to build and grow from it, and to put that as another tool in my tool jacket to kind of help out. And then to teach other women the same thing too. Like, don't be afraid to say something, because men do it all the time. So why can't we be given the same grace to do it? And so
Absolutely.
finding that and then getting the respect when you start to do that and the information you provide is correct and accurate with consistency, then you get more of that respect. I have, lost, like not lost, but left jobs in the past because it was the same redundant thing over and over again, and it hurts something that you helped build. I'm thankful where I'm at now. There are women. We actually have a woman who is one of our salespeople that gets up on roofs, and it's amazing to see that
Uh,
that um,
yeah.
they embrace women in this office and in the company.
I'm sure she gets mad respect on the
She did.
job sites too, because, it's to be able to do things like that and just hold your own. It's a powerful thing. And not every woman in construction has to do
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Some women are, sales jobs in the office or whatever they're doing, but there are a lot of powerful women in the trades that are out there doing it on the job site every day in the heat, in the cold. And I just admire those women. And I think that there's a lot of things that
right.
are out there that people don't realize, like, hey, this could be something you could go do and opportunities are there. So I think it's important to show young girls what's out there
Yeah,
and even young women in college, hey, there are so many opportunities to have a great career, make a good living, get great training
exactly.
within the construction industry. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there's not that in any job. Every
Exactly.
job has something. Yeah.
And
So I
that's
think the more we can talk about it.
and that's kind of why like I enjoy the space I'm at now. And it's like my other half, Garland, he's like, I've never seen you this happy. And I said, and I always tell him, I
Yeah.
said, it's because I'm in a space that I'm respected as a person. Here, it's not looked at
That's
as
awesome.
male or female. It's what do you bring to this table as a person? And so it's
Yeah.
amazing to have that feeling.
Yeah, and it's wonderful when you find that place and also a place that you can grow. Like I think you're in a spot where you've already only been there, however much time you've already moved around and moved up and developed and you're getting
Yep.
more responsibility. And then, there's just so much room for growth and runway for that. And I think that's important to have a career where you can develop and grow. And I think we should, as an industry, prioritize development better, which is one reason why, Build Gen Next and my company is coming up with a university to teach people training in the development space of soft skills and technical skills. Because then the more you have, like you said, in your tool belt, the more you can really feel confident.
Exactly. And then it's empowering those around you too and using that knowledge base. And that's something I've started doing more is letting the other women in the office know like these are the different things I'm doing. Let's do some things together. So it's kind of cool
Yeah.
being able to do that.
Yeah. What would you say to a young woman that's coming in and maybe she's not confident, she's not sure of herself? What would your best advice be to her to thrive and really feel comfortable in this industry?
Find your mentors and lean heavily on them in the beginning. Take lots of notes. I am a note taker. I always have my pen and paper with me. And don't be afraid to fail because every time you fall down, you can get back up. That's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I can't even count anymore how many times I've failed, but I've gotten back up and I've learned from those mistakes. And I've utilized
Yeah.
those issues in the past to grow better. So it's don't be afraid to fail and don't be afraid to succeed.
Absolutely. Those failures, boy, they sting, but they are great
They
teachers.
are. You can see
Like
they're
so much
hard,
more
but
from screwing up. Yeah. No, those ones where I've fallen flat on my face, I will never forget. That's for
and
sure.
that's how you
And
grow, and that's how you teach other people, hey, don't do this, and this is why a personal experience. So it's
yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. I would be interested to hear your thoughts since you're on, the roofing side of things. And obviously there are lots of things with solar and all sorts of stuff on trends. What trends are you seeing in the building industry that interest you or that you think are really cool from, maybe a product side to technology, whatever it is that you're
so
seeing and in your career?
so solar has taken off in Florida, which is great because we are the Sunshine State, and we actually
Yeah.
are the premier solar roof shingle roofer for GAF. So that
Okay.
side of everything is starting to grow. We do not only shingle, but we do PV as well. So we dabble.
So explain that for people maybe that
So
are
PV
listening
is
that don't really
photovoltaic.
understand what that means.
So it's not so much a shingle where it is another accessory that we could put on for an energy
Okay.
savings for your home. It's used a lot for like pool heaters and things like that in Florida. So that's something else that we do on this side as well.
Yeah, construction in Florida, for those of you who are not familiar, is a whole different beast. I lived there for about a year. Obviously, we talked about that already. And I was very interested to walk around and see how homes are being built. And, a lot of it is block in most areas in Florida, instead of being framed walls with a slab. And so it's a lot different thing. And then you have all of this amazing sunshine, like you said, and the energy bills and a lot of the things in Florida are actually really high. So solar is something I think that's really cool to talk about. And I love that, you guys are offering that.
Yeah.
And also having some of the things that, maybe you don't particularly think about, like technology and things like that, are really cool to see coming into an industry that's kind of a little antiquated most of the time,
It is.
to see that up and coming trend.
And then to have, the manufacturer to come in and kind of teach us and help us grow, and then us kind of giving our feedback too, that we can help develop a better product. It's been a lot of fun to do that as well.
Yeah, that's really cool that you are getting that opportunity. Well, one thing that I want to talk about that you do, and I don't want to miss this, like, I think it's so special, and this was not in the preview of the questions, but you have a really special organization that you're a part of, and you shared with me about that when we were in Orlando. Didn't ever get to come to one of the events. I'm hoping that we can do that soon. Talk to me about that. What is this about? Why do you do it, and how did it get started?
So the part that I helped co-found is called Events with Jonathan. When I was finishing up my master's degree, our capstone project was helping the founder of Jonathan's Landing do a lot of work, kind of research, because he wants to build. Jason Eichenholz is the mastermind behind Jonathan's Landing. He wants to build a 500-bed facility and create at least 5,000 jobs for people with autism. 500-bed facility, and it'll look more like a hotel than anything, for people to be able to live on their own. The issue is that after the age of 18 is when people start to lose their benefits through the government. And so parents still have to support their child, regardless. And then what happens when that parent passes away? Where's their child going to go? So by Jason creating this 500-bed facility, it's giving parents, 500 families, a location for their child to go. That way it takes away the barriers and the what ifs. And so when we were doing all of this research, I thought to myself, like, this isn't going to be built for about 5 years. We need to create stepping stones within the community to keep it relevant while we're doing the research, breaking ground and things like that. So my employer at the time had a suite at the Amway, well, now the Kia Center, where the Magic play, and he wanted to do something philanthropic. And I called Jason. I said, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? And so last season was our first inaugural season of Events with Jonathan. And so what we did, we had 8 suite nights where we had different suite donors donate a night. And we had different groups or people with autism and special needs. We had veterans with PTSD come into the suite. We get a total of around 16 to 20 tickets. And 16 of those tickets go out to the organization. We provide all the food. And so they get to enjoy a night at a game. For someone without any kind of disabilities, you take that for granted. But these are people that under normal circumstances, they can't go and sit in front of people. And so they're able to enjoy this time. And the amount of fulfillment that I've gotten for that emotionally is insane, because these people come to you and tell you, I would never have been able to do this if you wouldn't have given this to us. So giving that opportunity to people that, learn a little bit different, it's huge for me, because the thing is, like I said, we take these things for granted. And as a society, I've noticed that we will define the person with the disease prior to defining the person. And so I'm trying to change the paradigm to define the person and let that person define the disease that they have. And so this second year, the Magic are now working with us, as is Lady Services, who does all the food for the Magic. They donated all of the food to us. And to kind of understand the cost of that is anywhere from $18 to like $2,200 for each game that Levy has donated.
That's huge. That's so exciting. I didn't realize that. I think it's just such an amazing organization, and I love that. I didn't even realize that about the 500 beds, that he's doing that too. I knew what you were doing. So if anyone's in the Orlando area and would like to be a part of this, please reach out to Keeley. She is on LinkedIn, and then we're obviously going to have her information here. But this is a great charity that is just doing amazing things. And so if you have sports tickets, or if you want to donate money or time, any of these things, just reach out to Keeley. I think this is just such a good cause. My sister was a special ed teacher for 11 years, and she dealt with a lot of families with autism. And that was really most of the kids in her class were autistic or something, in Down syndrome, different things. And it was just the coolest thing for her to be able to really change those lives for a long time. But at school, right? And like you said, after they get home or they get older, it's a lot of times a really hard thing for the parents. So even to have those kids be able to have a night out, where they can just go have fun and the parents can have a little time to have some fun themselves, it's very powerful. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to just make sure
it brings tears to my eyes every single time, just because, we've been doing this is our second season, but every single game you have people come up and they're like, thank you, because we wouldn't have been able to do this. So it fills my cup every time.
And I think it's important in life to have things that are purposes that you believe in that don't have to do with making money or aren't just about succeeding or any of those things. I think it's really important. So I love that you're doing that. So one other thing regarding your personal and professional development that I want to talk about, you already spoke that you went back and got your MBA, which is amazing. And you have done a lot of different things over the years, I know, to develop, and you're reading and you're learning and all these things all the time. What do you think is the biggest advice you would give to younger people, especially women, that want to get more personal development? Maybe they don't know how to develop themselves. They don't know how to ask their employer for that, or maybe there's not a budget for it. What would you say that I guess weighs on your career, and how could you get around that if you don't have a program at your work that develops you?
I mean, reach out. There's so many different within the community. There's so many different places that offer free trainings, offer free classes, like Winter Park, where we're located in. They have all these different things with the Chamber of Commerce. So I think the most important thing is to reach out to your local Chamber of Commerce, because there's so many things that they offer that I didn't even know about till the last year, that don't get advertised. Look on Eventbrite, you search for keywords, look on LinkedIn, reach out to your network. That's something I learned at Rollins is we all have networks. And so everybody knows something, is rely heavily on your network, because that's going to get you so far in life.
Absolutely. And if you don't feel like you have a good network, there are ways to do that through building a brand, through building, LinkedIn, all these things that I talk about a lot, but also in-person networking. Like you said, go on Eventbrite and see what's happening in your 10 to 15 mile radius of your community. If you don't live in a big city, maybe you need to do it online. But there's a lot of things that are open to the public that you could go and do. Women's groups, career-based groups. Maybe it's something with a community organization like you were talking about earlier, that you can build those network partners that you don't know what you're going to end up being able to do with those people. It might be a business partner. It might be a future employer. It might be someone who's a friend or a confidant. It may be someone that, has a customer relationship that they could buy from you tomorrow. You just never know who you're going to meet. And then really being able to leverage those relationships, I think, is important, because as we talk about in How Women Rise, like a lot of times we build the relationships, but we don't leverage them. So how do you use your network to help others, and also to use it to help yourself and grow and thrive in your network? I think it's great advice.
And if you don't have something, make something. That's your part, is make it.
That's one reason why I started Build Women, is because I felt very alone when I was a woman in the job that I was in before. I got to a certain point and I looked around and I was like, man, I really wish I had someone to talk to about this, that understood, that had kind of been through it, maybe not the exact scenario, but was a woman in this construction industry. And there are organizations like that, but I just didn't feel like there was a place that I felt at home. And I never wanted a woman to feel that way again. So I thought, I'm going to just start something myself, just like you just said. And then as that's grown, it's been really cool to see how it's, it's affecting women in the way, hopefully, that I wanted it to when I was looking for that. I wish 25-year-old Stephanie had Build Women,
And I have to give a special thank you and shout out to you, because you're the reason why I came back into the roofing industry. You reminded me of the passion I had. So I can't say thank you enough. I am in such a great spot. You met me when I was not in the greatest spot. And just talking to you, you reminded me who I was, and you reminded me of the passion I had. So I cannot say thank you enough.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that. That's really sweet of you. And I am so glad you're back doing this, because you're so damn good at it that you shouldn't be not doing it. So you're obviously thriving because you're in your zone of genius, and I love to see women especially find that and then embrace it fully. So it's awesome to see
Thank
that, and
you.
congratulations on your success. And I know you're only going to be more successful.
Thank
I want to talk about How Women Rise. So How Women Rise is a book that I love. It's something we are building out. Our first Build Women University course is going to be this book and really going over what are the 12 habits that women have, and every woman doesn't have all 12, but there are 12 main things that women do that hold us back professionally. And so I want to talk through a few of them. We don't have time to go through all 12 today, but I want to ask you just kind of your opinion on some of these and get some advice for women that might be struggling. And the first one, I believe, is one of the biggest ones that most women struggle with. It's really not claiming your achievements. So you assume that other people will notice them spontaneously, just, noticing what you're doing, and you're not going to go say, I did that. That was me. Here's what I did this week. Here's the win I got. So how important is the principle of claiming those achievements versus what we're also taught of not being arrogant and there's no I in team? I find that's a very hard thing to balance. And how do you balance that in your job and your career to where people know what you're doing and what you're succeeding at, but they're also not thinking like, oh gosh, that girl, she just, all she does is talk about herself. Where's the balance of that?
I think the balance is celebrating everybody around you with the small wins and the big wins. And so when it comes time for your own, if you don't bring it up, hopefully somebody else will. But if someone doesn't, you're not afraid to say, hey, this is what I got done this week. But I think the balance in celebrating your team, because everybody contributes to winning. And so if you celebrate your team, like I said, when it's your turn, everyone's like, okay, that's awesome that you did that. So I think that for me was the biggest part of it. And it was learning how to speak up and say something. And I figured, how do I work on it with everybody else first? I'm like, oh, well, that's easy. Celebrate everybody else.
Yeah.
So
that's a great piece of advice. Like, really good answer, because if you're always doing that for others, it doesn't feel unnatural for you to do it for yourself.
Exactly.
Because they almost are like, why aren't you talking about what you're doing sometimes? So then when you do it, that's really great. Can you tell me about a time maybe where you struggled to claim that achievement, and how did you handle it to get your point across of what you were trying to say?
So with working in, this male-dominated industry, there was a time that a project manager was let go in the middle of a major project. So I just picked it up and I managed the project. I did a really large amount of change orders for it. I was ordering the material. I was staging, did everything. And I basically was the project manager on top of running my other day-to-day duties. And so at the end of it, I was like, hey, we got it done. Everything passed. We gained another 30% in revenue on this job. And so that was my first time I was like, okay, I need to say something if I do something that including, increasing the revenue on a project. So
that's a big deal. And so how did you do that? Did you just go to your supervisor and just tell them about it?
Yeah, I was like, here's what and I had a chronological order of like everything that got done and everything that I did to make sure that the job was completed from start to finish. All the inspections passed, everything was paid in full, everything was done. So I was like, here's everything that got done and here's what I did to ensure that it was completed, and our customer satisfaction was great on that project.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think keeping good notes and knowing what the timelines are and what actually you did is powerful, because data is hard to argue with and metrics are pretty solid. Usually if you say, hey, here's the numbers, a business person in a supervisory position is going to understand that. Don't go with feelings, go with facts.
Exactly.
So make sure you have that buttoned up and don't wait until the very end of the job to try to recant that and recount all those little numbers. Be documenting as you go. And I think that's on a job site or with any kind of negotiation. Make sure you have your facts ready, because they're hard to argue with. And trusting someone on something is a lot different than seeing it in writing.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I love that.
And document, because in the long run, it's only going to help you and benefit you. That way you have all you have all your ducks in a row. I mean, we always talk about not having ducks in a row, and this is one thing you can document facts. You get more reports to get those facts too. And that's always important.
And on the other flip side of that is that sometimes we do screw up and we have blind spots and we have things we can always improve. I think any business, any person, And so when you're documenting like that, a lot of times you can see where things went wrong, like literally on paper, because you look at that and say, okay, well, here's the timeline, and then this is kind of where it got off, and here's where that problem was. Maybe it was a product, or maybe it was a person, or maybe it was you. And so you can then next time innovate that to say, I'm not going to let that happen again, or I'm going to really hone in on this part of the project and watch this closely because I know that this is where the last project went wrong.
Exactly.
And so when you document that and you have some sort of track or paper trail, you can really do that. If you don't do that, you're just going to be hoping and guessing that you find the right problem to innovate and pivot to next.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, let's move to number 2, which is sort of similar to number 1. It's expecting people to spontaneously notice your contributions. So you're working away, and I think one thing that people forget, because we all think about ourselves. I mean, most people, their name is their favorite word in the English language, and they love to know what they're doing. They're counting their contributions internally, but they expect that their boss, their team, the C-suite, however far up it goes, just knows what they're doing, right? They know those little nuances. If you unpack this and you think about this from the perspective of a manager, which I learned this lesson really quickly when I became a manager of 10 people, was, oh yeah, they have no idea what I'm doing because they have a million trillion things going on. This is not about me. And it's very hard to see that when you're an individual contributor sometimes. And it is all about you to you in some respects. So do you think it's important for a boss to understand and see those achievements and not have to draw attention to yourself? And if you think that that's kind of how people are perceiving it, how would you caution people to not fall into that trap and make sure they are documenting and talking to their manager about that on a regular basis?
I think the biggest part is follow up, follow through, especially when you're managing a team. Be consistent in your message, be consistent in your documentation. And that way you're rinse and repeat with the same thing. That way everybody knows your expectations, what you expect of them and what they can expect out of you. I think that's the biggest part is, going through job files, documenting in them, having your own internal checklist of things that you need to get done and doing that over and over so that the consistency is there. And having that consistency, it will drive your metrics because you're constantly doing stuff. And the other part of it too is going and supporting your team as well. I think that's huge in teamwork. And if you see something missing, don't just always go and say something. Just go and help them out and do it because it shows that you're a team player and you're here to help the company as a whole versus just doing yourself. And I think in doing all of those things, people will see that you're doing that. Your C-suite will see them, and so will your colleagues, and they know that you're a dependable person.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially as a leader, that you're willing to go get in the trenches sometimes with your team.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be that way, but sometimes it's something as small as, like, I used to see people in my last job, they would walk through the warehouse and they would see a piece of trash on the ground, and instead of like going and yelling at someone for the trash being there, they just pick it up and put it in the trash can. And watching a senior leader do that is very powerful because then you as a individual contributor, like, well, number one, I better not let trash be on the ground and my boss have to pick it up again. But number two, it's like, oh, wow, they're just one of us and they're out there helping and doing what needs to be done to make the job happen. So that is very powerful. And then as an individual, how would you say that you can advocate for yourself to make sure you are showing up and talking about your achievements and you're not just waiting on someone to see them?
Say something, as we talked about earlier, celebrate everybody else so you can celebrate yourself as well. So it doesn't feel weird that you're saying, hey, I got this done, because you're also celebrating your team. So I think that is the biggest take home of that is celebrate everything.
And don't wait too long.
I'm sorry?
Don't wait too long to do that. Like, don't wait till the end of the year when you have a review.
Exactly.
That was one of my biggest pet peeves. Like, for me was 12 months of telling somebody what you did is a long time.
It is.
Yeah. So how do you do that in your job? Are you documenting that? How are you keeping up with what you're accomplishing and making sure that your professional leaders are seeing that?
Well, we have spreadsheets of the different things that we do, and we mark them complete and things like that. So it's knowing what got completed And then you can just go into our company documents and see all the documentation and things like that. So it's, and one
Okay.
that,
So you have a system.
I'm sorry,
They have a system
we
that's
have a
working.
system. And then, just documenting and knowing that that job got completed, that's how we know, okay, this got done, this person handled it. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that that's a big one that women miss out on a lot. So I would just say, especially if you're young and you want to kind of stay quiet and keep down low for a little while and just kind of keep your head down, make sure that people do know what you're doing and that you appreciate your contributions and don't wait too long to speak up about that.
exactly.
So, and I love the teamwork aspect of it that you also are helping your team because I've had a lot of people that will say like, "Hey, she did that and she killed it," And I think as women, for us to be able to pull other people up as we climb is a big deal. And to not have a mean girls culture where you're just trying to like stomp over the dead bodies of the other women that you walked over to get to the top. And I've had moments in my career where I felt that way. Like there's only one spot and I'm going to get it. And that's it. Like we're going to fight to the death for it. And unfortunately, with so few leadership roles with women, sometimes that happens. But I think the more that we can reach around and, hold hands and say, we're stronger together and we're going to pull each other up, that mentality will get us a lot further than that backbiting. And there's like a lot of girl on girl crime that I see. And I'm curious to see your like thoughts. Have you had a lot of that happen? And if you have, like, how have you handled that?
In the past, I have, and that's when I've sat there and sat back and kind of looked at everything. And it takes so much energy to do something negative that I'd rather take that energy and do something positive. And I've
Yeah.
had in the past where I had a friend that asked me to get her a job, and she, there was issues with the company, and I had confided in her because she was one of my best friends of all the issues prior to bring her on board. And so you would never have thought that she would have turned around and like backstab me and go to the owners and say, she said this and this and this. I'm like, thanks. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need someone to vent to, someone you think you trust. And so that
Yeah.
trust just went out the door. And so in turn, I don't do that anymore because you never know. And so now I'll look at things and see where it's broken so I can kind of give a solution as to what can get done to fix that issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson on the gossip thing too, because I think it's really easy to fall a trap to that as like, well, this is what I heard. And part of that is communication being strong in the company where you don't have to fill in the blanks. Cause I think people start to do real crazy things when they start filling in the blanks and tell themselves stories about what's happening, especially when it deals with their livelihood and they're scared because fear will do a lot of things to people. So I think the more you can communicate as a company and also have that policy in your life. I've tried very hard to cut that out of my life. Is like not going to just gossip all the time about this.
Exactly.
And even though sometimes it's fun to be that type of, conversation, it actually does really hurt you a lot. And so I learned that lesson the hard way. And I think a lot of other people, not just women, I mean, I know men that gossip more than any woman I've ever met. So it's just part of the culture. But I think really trying your best not to be a part of that, it does keep you from being in the middle of some of the drama that maybe people like to make in a situation like that where you probably didn't really do a whole lot wrong. You were warning her ahead of time before she even worked there, but then she went and used it against you. But that drama got created either way. So how do we just stop it at the beginning is we control what we can control, which is ourselves.
And the other thing too, is I learned from that is reach out to your mentors and say, I'm having X problem. Here's what I'm thinking. What have you done in the past? If you've had something like this, what have you done and what do you suggest I do to fix it? And mentors are a huge reason for the success I've had thus far. So it's relying on mentors.
That's awesome. Especially if they're not involved with the company or even the industry. I found that sometimes the best mentors are people that don't really understand the nuances because they see things maybe a different way than you do because you're so entrenched in it day to day. And so they see it from a whole different view. And that's a powerful thing too.
Yeah. And they like you said, they think of things differently because it might be somebody in the medical field that'll say, this is how I did this. And it's like, okay. And that's a whole different perspective. So it makes you think differently going forward.
Absolutely. Well, the last habit that we're going to cover today is the disease to please. That people pleasing, that a lot of girls are bred very young to be quiet, be perfect, make sure everyone's happy, say thank you. I know we're both from the South, and that is a very Southern thing.
It is.
My My mom made sure that I knew to say please and thank you, like, to a fault. And I'm curious, have you ever said yes to something at work or in your personal life that you knew was gonna offer you very little benefit as far as, like, you're not gonna learn from it, you're not gonna grow, but you said yes because you thought that you needed to or you wanted to please the person that was asking you to do that? And tell me about that and how that worked in your career.
Well, on a personal note, yes, it has, and it's trying to always be that friend. And
Yeah.
so something again that you taught me is you can't always be a friend to everybody. You've got to take care of yourself first. And so
Yeah.
um last year I kind of did a lot of soul searching and realized that I was giving a lot of my energy and effort to people that weren't returning it. And I don't always expect people to return it, but when you constantly have someone that needs to constantly lean on you, and it's like 24/7, 365. It's like I have kids, I have a spouse that I need to take care of also. So when that person is taking away from you, and it's like you have nothing left in the cup. There's a saying about like if your cup is empty, you can't give back.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
learning who those emotional vampires are and removing them from your life, if that's all they ever do is suck you dry basically, and they never give
Yeah.
anything to give back. And so I've learned last year was a big learning year for me, and I stopped caring about what people thought about me in that aspect because I know what I do, I know what I give, and I know that if I make a mistake or someone can come and tell me, hey, you made a mistake or whatever, I'm going to take that criticism so that I can grow. But people who are, trying to judge me for any other thing like my weight and everything else like that, none of those things can pay any of my bills, so I don't care. And it took a lot to
Yeah.
get to this point, but here I am and I love it. And it took a lot of emotional weight off of me doing it.
Yeah. I love that you've done that work, and I think it's always a constant battle, especially for women. Um, One of my mentors that I love from reading books is Jamie Kern Lima. She actually invented It Cosmetics and sold it for $1 billion and all these things. And I heard her on social media this week. She's about to release a new book, and she said, "How much has your weight and your thoughts about your weight, the judgment that you've put on yourself because of that, how much has it already taken from you?
A lot.
And how much are you willing to give that you haven't already given?" She was telling a story about she had sold this huge business. It was like $4 billion or something crazy.
Yeah.
She's, worth all this money. She's done everything. And she was still worried about going to the swimming pool on vacation with her little girl.
I
And
remember
she said,
I actually did a TikTok about it.
yeah, yeah. And I thought, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I struggled that a lot more in my younger years than I do now, but it is a real thing. And it's not just women who are overweight, it's women who are underweight, it's women who don't like their hair, they don't like their nose. The weight is not even, that's just a one thing.
Exactly.
It's about finding a way to love yourself and believing in yourself beyond anybody else's judgments, which is really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to say it's really hard. And there's never a day where you're like all the way there. Like maybe on Monday you are, but come Tuesday, right? But it's a constant learning of like, I do love who I am. I am still a work in progress. I want to be healthy. I want to be all those things. But you don't let that define or stop you. How much have you already given to that? How much energy, how much time, how much have you lost because of it that you won't get back?
Exactly.
So I love that you brought that up because I think it's something that most women deal with. We all have something. A supermodel has something just like you and I have something, just like every other woman has something that they don't like, that they're not, it may be not even external, maybe something they don't like their, the way they think about something or their voice or whatever. But you have to embrace who you are. And I think if I could give one piece of advice to a 25-year-old me, I would say, stop trying to be like everybody else. Stop trying to fit into this mold of what you think success looks like, of how you think you're going to get there, and start figuring out what you are actually world class at, what your true zone of genius is. And you said this earlier, get back into that, find it, lean into it, and then you're going to figure out you're happier, you're more fulfilled, you're less likely to quit because even though it's hard, it's your thing, right?
Exactly.
And if you can find that early, like, holy crap, if I had found that at 25, I don't even know where I'd be. I don't like to think about it because I feel like I wasted a lot of time trying to be a man in a management vest doing accounting, which is like the least likely thing I'd ever do.
Wanna. And
Yeah.
saying
So
a lot of years, and now I don't harp on the years lost. I look at how many years I have ahead of me to enjoy everything now. So
yeah, absolutely.
learn those
And
lessons
so what
past to be a freight train going forward to plow through it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question for you, I ask everyone this, is what advice would you give a 25-year-old Keeley? And then what does the word grit mean to you?
So never give up. 25-year-old self me, I was still in the middle of a divorce. I had 4 kids under the age of 5.
Wow.
I didn't know what I was doing with my life. It was a very bad part of my life, and I thought that my world was crumbling around me. And
Truth.
so today I can stand tall and say, never give up. And whatever a negative you're given, use it, find the positive in everything, and build from that. Never look at everything as a negative, because if you do, you're going to sit at the bottom, you're going to sit on the ground, and you're going to cry. Find the positive,
Yeah.
because every lesson has a positive. Find those and get up and keep moving. Don't give up.
I love that.
Rely on your friends, rely on your family, rely on your network. And if you don't have it, make something out of it. Like you've done, like I've done, like create it, do it.
Build
That way
it.
other
Yeah.
5-year-olds have somewhere to go. Do it.
I love that. It's great. And then what does the word grit mean to you?
Grit to me means is building something and getting through the nitty-gritty of everything and figuring out your fingerprints and your blueprints and building something from it. Everything starts from something. A house has to be built from blueprints, and so you build your own. And sometimes it's okay to start from scratch and redo, and that's part of the grit of it all. Is get dirty, make mistakes. Magic School Bus. What did it teach us?
That's a great reference. Great way to end this with a little Magic School Bus. I love that.
So, make mistakes, get messy, but have fun and do it. And you're going to make mistakes. Just learn from them and move forward. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to get dirty, because it's fun.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the Grit Blueprint with me. I'm sad we're not in person, but I'm glad to see your beautiful face, and your energy is just so contagious. And I think that the more the world has people that are like you that have that great positive outlook, the better off we would all be. So thank you so much. I'm glad to call you a friend, and I am glad for the world to get to know a little bit about you. If you want to connect with Keeley, she is on LinkedIn. We'll drop that link in the show notes here. And I appreciate all of you for listening. Join us next time on the Grit Blueprint with Stephanie Couch. Thanks for joining us on the Grit Blueprint. If you're a woman who's ready to build your brand, lead with impact, and make your mark on the world, visit buildwomen.com to learn more about how we can help you build your personal brand. See you next time on the Grit Blueprint.